Hi, it's Scott Vogel on sex addiction. I'm going to share with you 12 tips to help with recovery from sex addiction. If you or someone you know is suffering from sex addiction, I want to let you know that you are not alone, and they are not alone. There is help for those struggling. Recovery is possible. There is hope. These 12 tips include some of the 12 steps of recovery from sex addiction, which I highly recommend anybody struggling with any type of sex addiction, lust addiction, sex and love addiction, go find a 12-step meeting, face-to-face, online, or on the internet. These tips will help you in learning a little bit about your addiction or someone else's addiction and getting into recovery. Tip 1 is to first admit that your life has become unmanageable and that your sexual urges, your lust, your sexual obsessions, compulsions, and desires are out of control. Now, when we say unmanageable, we mean that things in your life that you used to do, you're doing less of, or you stop doing altogether. You spend more time in your sexual behaviors than you do in activities that you really would rather be doing. It's about being honest, saying, I need help, I have a problem, my life is unmanageable. That's the first tip. The second tip is to be certain that you're ready and prepared for the process of recovery. And make sure you're seeking recovery for the right reasons. Because somebody's telling you to do it is not necessarily the right reason, and you're not going to get fully into recovery. But if you're truly ready, and you're ready for the process, you're prepared for it, because it's a process. Recovery is not an activity, it's a process. It's going to take time. It took you time to get where you are. It's going to take time and work to get into recovery and stay in recovery. And you have to determine what the right reason is, and it's usually having to do with leading a better, richer, fuller, more successful life so that you can lead the upper limits of being in your life. That's the right reason. Tip 3 is to set SMART goals. By SMART, I mean they need to be specific. Specifically, how many meetings will you go to? Specifically, will you seek out professional help? Specifically, how many calls will you make? How many days will you attend meetings? Specifically, how much literature will you read? What will you do? How can you measure it? How could somebody from the outside look in and say, oh, he or she has gone to this many meetings, made this many phone calls? Is it attainable? A lot of times addicts set themselves up to fail by making everything too perfect, like a lot of things in their lives have been. It has to be based on real life and not fantasy. It can't be doing things that are unrealistic. It has to be real. And it needs to be time-based. Goals need to be set by time so that if it's this what will be done this week, this month, and make sure that these goals are written down and shared with someone you trust. Tip 4 is avoid the people, places, and things that trigger your addiction. If you were an alcoholic, you probably wouldn't go hang out in bars. If you're a sex addict, it probably doesn't make sense to go to places that trigger you, whether it's a strip club or whether it's people that trigger you, that excite you to act out in your addiction. Avoid those things that trigger you. Make an honest moral inventory of your life's history. Now, for those of you that have worked the 12 steps, you know that that's step 4. Step 4 is about courage. It's about honesty. It's about looking at your entire life of what you did right. Remember, moral is right and wrong. It's about what you did right in your life and some of the things that you did wrong, because to get here, you made some mistakes. Tip number 6 is to make a list and reflect on the exact nature of your sexual, personal, spiritual, and other wrongs. So you make this list and you write down the things you did sexually that were wrong, that you wouldn't want to do, or you wouldn't want somebody to do to you or somebody you loved. What were the personal wrongs that you may have perpetrated on others? And the spiritual wrongs that you did to yourself. Don't forget when you make any list that you have to think of how you've harmed yourself in this process. Tip number 7 is to make a list of all the people who you have harmed as a result of the wrongs that you just listed in tip number 6. So you can see, who did you hurt personally? Who did you hurt professionally? Who did you hurt spiritually? Again, you put yourself on those lists because in the wake of destruction, in an addict's life, they hurt themselves first. They hurt the God of their understanding. They hurt the ones they love. They hurt friends. They hurt everybody around them. So make these lists and make sure you have support of a sponsor or a trusted fellow or an advisor or a guide or a therapist, because as you come up and start to look at the reality of what was wrong in your life, you need somebody to help you so you can talk about it. Tip number 8 is to carefully, and with the help of a sponsor or guide, and I'll say that again, with the help of a sponsor or guide, you make direct amends to those people, except when it may cause harm, not good. This is step number 9 for those who work the 12 steps and are familiar. It's making direct amends to those people, except when to do so would injure them or others. So let's say that you had an affair with somebody else's spouse. To go make that amend to the spouse or the other person would do more harm than good. So you have to remember, be very careful about making amends. And if it's going to hurt somebody, talk with your sponsor or guide and make sure you're doing it for the right reason. Tip number 9 is take a daily inventory of your actions and behaviors. And be ready and willing to admit you're wrong and make amends for those wrongs. So at the end of the day, it makes sense to look at your day and take an inventory of any wrongs that you may have done. You can also take an inventory of a lot of the good things that you've done that day. And if you've done something wrong, admit that you're wrong and make amends for those wrongs. And it could be something small. It could be a white lie. It could be a little lie. It could be something that you did that's really not good and you're not proud of. It's very freeing when you take this inventory, realize that you might have to apologize to somebody and make an amend. An amend could be something as simple as, you know, friend, when we were walking this morning and I made that comment, I shouldn't have, and I apologize for that. And at least you've made the amend and put it out there. How they handle it, that's up to them. Tip 10 is evaluate your life on a daily basis and make necessary adjustments to your moral character. So it follows on tip 9, and it's similar to step 10 in the 12 steps of recovery from addiction, is continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. This goes a little further and says, well, if I'm lying a lot, then I need to make an adjustment to that character. It might be a character defect that you haven't looked at. You may find yourself getting angry or short-tempered and realize that there's a character defect. You may be judging people a little bit too much or at all and realize, well, maybe that's a defect of character I need to add and go back and do a little bit of step work around defects of character in steps 6 and 7. Tip number 11 is to create a solid support network on people you trust and who understand and empathize with you. So you build a support network on people you trust. So you have to rely on people. You have to lean on people. In recovery, we need to ask people for help. That's what step 7 is about. Humility, humbly asked. We have to ask now for help. We don't go it alone. We know what happens when we go it alone. We act out when we have the help of others who we can trust. And in time, we learn to trust people in the fellowship. They become our friends. They become our best friends. They know us. They understand us. They can empathize. They can guide us with their experience, their strength, and their hope. Work on being part of a group, not alone. And tip number 12 is seek professional care. When in recovery from sex addiction and working the steps and unraveling the wake of destruction you caused in your life and the unmanageability and the harms you have done, you need professional care. You need a therapist. If you can find a certified sex addiction therapist, that's best. Somebody that can help you through what got you to where you are and can help you get to where you want to be. 12 steps are excellent support for recovery. You need a certified sex addiction therapist or somebody that's familiar with helping you work the 12 steps and to helping you untangle the mess and the trauma that you experienced in your life that got you here. So, in review, 1, admit that your life has become unmanageable and that you really need help. Be ready and prepared for what's to come. A lot of hard work, a lot of good work. Set your goals, specific, measurable, attainable, real life, and time-based. Avoid people, place, and things that may have triggered you. Take an inventory of your life. List your wrongs. List the people you've harmed and make amends to those people you have harmed. Clean the slate. Clean up your side of the street. Take a daily inventory and look at your day and how you're doing. Evaluate your life on a daily basis, and do you need to change any of your character defects into character virtues? Develop a solid support system. And lastly, seek professional care. Visit our YouTube channel on sex addiction for more videos on sex addiction and recovery from sex addiction. Also, visit our blog at www.onsexaddiction.com for a free video explaining sex addiction, what sex addiction is, 7 symptoms of sex addiction, the 4 traumas of sex addiction, and the 4 faulty core beliefs set up by the traumas of addiction, as well as the solution, the 7 paths to success in recovery from sex addiction. You'll find more information about sex addiction and recovery from sex addiction as well. This is Scott Vogel on sex addiction.